Welcome, this is Late Night Saga Reviews. I'm E-Rock, and here we talk about late night television of the past and present, and sometimes we follow its stars on other journeys. Today we're following Cynthia Garrett, who was once the star of NBC's Later back in the year 2000.
Hi everyone, welcome to Later. I'm Cynthia Garrett, your host.
In 2020, her father Bernard Garrett was the subject of a movie called The Banker, which told his life story. It starred Anthony Mackie and Samuel L. Jackson. First, I'll review the movie, and then I want to get into the controversy surrounding its release.
How would you like to buy a bank?
What the hell do we know about banking?
Owning a bank is like owning the other side of the real estate business.
There's a few complexities you just left out.
Like what?
Oh, I'm sorry. Did I not wake up black this morning? Because I'm pretty sure I did. Yep, still black.
The Banker tells the story of Bernard Garrett, played by Anthony Mackie, a smart young man who moves from his home in Texas to pursue his dream of being a real estate investor in Los Angeles.
I came here to try my hand at real estate.
There's not a lot of colored real estate agents.
Owning property and renting it out.
Nia Long plays his always supportive wife.
Sometimes you need to take a step back and enjoy what you've accomplished, baby.
When Garrett finds out that no one wants to sell to a black man, he finds a white businessman played by Cole Meany to front his operation. But when he dies, Garrett finds himself out of a job again. Now he's forced to work with Joe Morris, played by Samuel L. Jackson.
Now, convince me.
Well, the best place to learn about the present state of the real estate market is inside of a bank. We get that building, we'll be inside 12 of them.
Another obstacle in the way of their success is their inability to secure bank loans, since black men aren't even allowed in the bank. Garrett hatches a plan to buy the banker's building itself, figuring that the banks can't refuse him entrance if he owns the place.
And next time, they'll think twice about refusing to make loans to us if we're their landlords.
But before he can buy the building, he needs another white man to act as the face of his company. Enter Nicholas Hoult as Matt Steiner. He's not good at math, but he has a good memory, so he can memorize a script that Garrett writes for him to get through business meetings. And this was the best part of the movie. Our four main characters hatch a plan to pull off this business deal, almost like a heist movie. First, Garrett and Morris have to train Steiner to act like a rich man would.
You ever play golf?
No?
Before you learn how to talk real estate, you gotta learn how to talk to rich white folks, so it seems like you one of them.
Talk like a businessman, and improvise as much as he can. I almost started to think that Steiner was the banker of the title, a character constructed by committee to carry out the plan. Hopefully not too much of a spoiler to say that they do succeed in buying the bank. The problems start when Garrett decides to buy a second bank in his home state of Texas. Since he can't be in two states at once, he sends Steiner to run the Texas bank by himself, which he's not as ready for as he thinks.
Show me the methodology you used to justify that book value.
I have an expert to do that.
Bring him in, please.
He's not in today.
After Steiner fails spectacularly at the bank, Texas legislators take aim at the entire operation, using the second bank as a pretext to punish these black men for daring to want a piece of the American dream. And we end with a big courtroom trial.
Why is it so important to you to exclude an entire race of people from the American dream?
Performances were excellent all around. The film moved pretty quickly, and it kept a mostly light and fun tone for what is a rather serious historical drama. Like I said, they played it kind of like a heist movie, which kept it from ever getting too dark.
So we're really gonna do this now?
If by we you mean you.
Yeah.
It was a very entertaining movie about an unfortunate time in history. But how true of a story was it? Let's dig in.
It's nice glasses. You near sight or the far side?
Does it matter?
He doesn't have his glasses. You don't need them. You gotta read his opening statement.
He doesn't need his glasses. He never has.
Yeah, that was dramatic invention, but he didn't.
So Bernard did not wear.
He didn't wear fake glasses. No.
To understand the controversy, let's start out by looking at the Garrett family tree. Bernard Garrett and his first wife Eunice, portrayed by Nia Long in The Banker, had a son named Bernard Jr. Bernard Sr. then married his second wife, Linda, and had Cynthia and the rest of her siblings. Finally, Bernard Sr. divorced Linda and married his third wife, Kathy Ussery, who he was still married to when he passed away in 1999. Cynthia Garrett has claimed that her half-brother Bernard Jr. had molested her and her sister when they were about 7 and 4 years old.
I was sexually abused within the family structure, and incest damages your ability to be intimate in a number of extra ways on top of the fact that, as a child, you're being sexually abused.
For this reason, he was the black sheep of the family, no longer on speaking terms and no longer living with them. And it was Bernard Jr. who signed away his father's life story to be made into this movie, for which he initially received a co-producer credit and, I would assume, a nice payday.
This sexual abuser shouldn't be allowed to profit here. This is sick.
Cynthia Garrett, her mother Linda, and the rest of the family were appalled that Apple Studios would knowingly work with a sexual predator.
If the biggest corporation on the planet won't stand with women and children, who will?
Bernard Jr. denied all the claims, saying, "My half-sisters Cynthia and Sheila have accused me of molesting them in the early 70s. This simply never happened, period. What did happen is that I told my father when I discovered that their mother Linda was cheating on him, and they have always blamed me for the breakup that followed." Cynthia and her mother assert that the movie slanders Linda by omitting her from the story. They claim the events of the movie, particularly from Bernard's acquisition of the banker's building up until the trial, all occurred when he was married to Linda. But the movie depicts these events as happening to Bernard and Eunice.
My older half-brother, my father's son from his first marriage to Eunice, who is portrayed in the movie, who had nothing to do with the story that the film is centered around, because the person who sexually abused us couldn't come to us and ask for the rights to the story.
The Banker was the first movie acquired by and set to be released by Apple Originals. It was scheduled to debut at AFI Fest November 21st, 2019. But the day before, Cynthia Garrett went public with a statement which caused Apple to change plans. They pulled the debut screening and the planned December 6th theatrical release while they investigated the claims. The two sides of the family also disagreed on who had the rights to tell their father's story. Bernard Jr. said, "What did happen is that Cynthia asked my father twice to give her the right to make a movie of his life story, and twice he turned her down, and instead decided to entrust those rights to me and a friend of mine."
He spent a long time, I think, trying to bring this whole thing to life and keep it hidden from my mom.
Linda Garrett, who was omitted from the events of the film, released her own statement, saying, "I am the last word and the only word on this story. These men clearly don't have the wisdom or perspective to tell anybody my story and my husband's story. Or am I to believe that these filmmakers think Bernie Jr., who was a young boy and uninvolved completely at the time of the events, knows more than I do about my life with my husband?" And the filmmakers responded, "We understand that Linda Garrett and members of her family take issue with the fact that they were not dramatized in The Banker, and though we sympathize, we can only reiterate that our film is based almost entirely on Bernard Garrett Sr.'s own narrative of his life, both in sworn testimony before the U.S. Senate in 1965 and in recorded interviews he did for the film itself." Apple ultimately decided to release the film for a limited theatrical run starting March 6, 2020, followed by streaming it to Apple TV Plus starting on March 20th. Bernard Jr. said, "For myself, the best I could do was remove my name from the film and step away so as not to tarnish my father's legacy." The filmmakers added, "We collectively agreed that removing his co-producer credit from the film and his financial participation from its release was the most respectful course of action." Which makes you wonder, with all the hoopla surrounding cancel culture, which is mostly overblown, can the studio legally withhold Bernard Jr.'s financial participation that they were contractually obligated to pay him? Is there some morals clause in the contract that allows them to deny him his points on the back end? He was still likely paid a tidy sum when he first signed on. As Kathy Ussery Garrett noted, Bernard Jr. has already been paid for this movie, and even though he no longer receives a co-producer credit, he still appears as a character in the movie.
Take Junior with you. He needs to see where he comes from up close.
He's listed in the credits, and he gets a special thanks.
Your half-brother was the co-producer of the movie.
Yes, and he interjected himself into the movie.
Doesn't the studio still have to pay him for his likeness? I guess not, if he's had all of his financial participation removed. The filmmakers concluded by saying, "We set out to tell a story we were very passionate about, recounting the remarkable lives of Bernard Garrett Sr. and Joe Morris. We stand by the film and its positive message of empowerment."
I hope that people see this movie and take the promise from it, take the spirit of it, where this young man, along with his amazing wife, wouldn't take no for an answer.
I hope Cynthia Garrett and her side of the family have made some peace with the release of the movie. I don't know what sort of understanding they came to with Apple. The movie's still out there. It's on streaming. Anybody can watch it. So, hopefully people get some value out of learning Bernard Garrett's life story and his place in history. I don't know if Cynthia Garrett or Linda have plans to do their own version of the movie, or I think his third wife, Kathy, said she was helping him write his memoirs at the time he died in 1999. So will there ever be a book published with a more accurate version of Bernard's story, or another movie? And would it be any different than this one? I don't know. All I can say is this movie was entertaining for a historical drama, and hopefully people can, if they view it, can get something out of it. And hopefully the next late night adjacent movie that I review won't have this much controversy.
As far as you are concerned, this movie should never be seen by the public.
Ever.